Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have our very first Take Control author under the new ownership of Take Control Books with Joe Kissel, but it's not Joe, no, which is kind of a surprise because Joe seems to write so many. But I'm delighted to have Scholle McFarland back to talk about her latest book, Take Control of Calendar and Reminders. Mm-hmm. And Scholle, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's terrific, and congratulations on the new book, obviously. Is this, I have to admit, though, is this a brand new title or is this a revision?
This is a brand new title.
That's what I thought.
We were looking for something that might be kind of fun and quick. Little did we realize that calendar is deceptively simple. So it actually was a little harder than we realized, and what was going to be a very short book ended up being about 130 pages. But it just means that it's that much more useful for people because we were amazed at all the different things that were hidden in it.
Well, not only that, but this book does not just cover the Mac calendar and Mac reminders, but you spread it across the Apple ecosystem.
We did, yeah. They're really connected, especially I think reminders is the biggest example. Reminders, I had not really even ever opened the app before because I do it all using my phone and Siri. And that's one of the great things about reminders in particular is that whenever anything occurs to you, you can use whatever device you have, use Siri, and that reminder goes up and it will alert you whenever you asked it to. So it's one of the apps that really shows off the integration of the different Apple devices very nicely.
It took me a little while to realize that reminders, even though they show up sort of in the calendar, or they can show up in the calendar, that it's a completely separate application to manage your reminders or things to do or however you choose to use it.
Yeah, it used to be part of calendar. So that's the confusion. And so it was prior to Mountain Lion. You would have the little to-dos would come down the side of your calendar. But they split them when they turned iCal into calendar. They split off the to-dos and put them in a new app, which was reminders. So that's actually a really common confusion because that's where it was forever, and then it kind of disappeared. And if you weren't somebody who used it a lot, that was easy to miss. But you actually still can see the reminders on a calendar in reminders. That was one of the things we wanted to include because lots of people liked being able to see their to-dos connected with dates.
Yeah, I guess it makes perfect sense to have the two sort of mashed up a little bit, and we all got used to it the way it was. But right now, I guess you have the option you can split it out and just look at reminders, or you can tweak the calendar app and put everything there. Am I correct?
No, it's not inside of the calendar app anymore at all.
It's not,
but
okay.
In the reminder app, you can show a little calendar, and then there are dots on it to show you where your to-do items are. Okay. But yeah, it's completely gone from calendar now. It's its own little thing.
Well, I will do a caveat here as far as I'm concerned. I use BusyCal for my calendar replacement. But I still fire up calendar. Whenever somebody sends me an invite, say on a Google Calendar or anywhere else, you get that ICS file, double-click it, and it pops open, usually Calendar, and loads it in there, which, of course, then BusyCal can access. So,
Chuck, you can change that, of course. And my book would show you how.
What a wonderful segue.
If you go into calendar preferences, the top item in the general preferences is what your default calendar is. So you can go in there and you could change that to BusyCal, and then you wouldn't have to go through calendar anymore.
Okay, good. I probably, that's one thing about all of this stuff, Scholle, that there's so many things you can do. You tend to forget that you can do certain things.
Yeah, definitely.
So what you said that you hadn't even opened the reminders. What was the biggest surprise as you researched this book? And I'll open that up to all the platforms that it addresses.
Yeah. Well, it was fun actually doing the reminders half of the book. I was at my book club, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, I've never heard of that, but I use the To Do app." And she took out her iPhone and she opened reminders, and then she was like, "Oh, that is reminders." People just don't even quite realize what it is, even if they've been using it. But reminders it's a very small app, but it can do a lot of really cool stuff. The way I use it, there's kind of two ways to use it. I use it as like a backup brain. So if I have my iPhone or my Apple Watch, whatever I have with me, when I think of something that I need to do, I just say, "Hey Siri, remind me to call Chuck at 5:00. And that goes in there, and then I don't have to open anything. It's extremely reliable with Siri. So this is one of those things, if you haven't really known how Siri could be useful, reminders shows you how, because you don't have to do anything extra, because if you do anything extra, you might forget whatever it was you're trying to remember. So it's very seamless. No matter what you have, you can just get that reminder in there really quickly. Other people actually, and this was what I hadn't done before, use it completely differently. They use it like a to-do list. So they reveal all their to-dos, and then they just use it to check off categories. So that's like what my friend was doing it. She had like books I want to read, things I need to do for work, people I need to call. She has all these very well organized lists, and then she tracks them all there. And the cool thing about reminders is it's got the iCloud hookup, so any other device that you have signed into iCloud with the same account, it appears there. And the handy thing about that is you can share your reminders with other people. So if you want to have a grocery list with your spouse or your roommate or whomever, you can share a grocery list, and then whenever you think of it, add something to that list, and they'll be able to see it. And as they check off items because they've gone to the grocery store, they'll disappear. So you'll know that they've gotten that. So it's really easy to share it. Again, it has to be with another iCloud user, but it's just is no hassle at all. So that can be a really handy way to keep track of something with somebody else too.
I've a quick note, folks. If Shawi triggered your Siri, don't call me tomorrow at 5, please. I'm hoping the voice recognition thing will work well enough that it's not you, and so that wasn't added to your things to do list. Shawi, you bring up a great point though, because that's one way I use Siri all the time, and I'm going to be careful too. With my phrasing, but inevitably, if whether I'm using my watch, whether I'm using my iPad, my iPhone, whatever, it's always, hey, remind me to do this at such and such, or add this to my calendar, or whatever. It really does, I think, change the whole game when it comes to using all of these apps.
Yeah, it's great, and it's great because in that case, Siri. The way you use Siri helps you get something done. It's not like a bell or a whistle. It's really very functional. So I think because of that, people get really excited at the idea that that's all they have to do is raise their watch and say, "Hey, Siri, remind me to get bleach," or whatever. I think a lot of people get really excited about that. The other thing, the last really cool thing about reminders, from my point of view, is that you can do location-based reminders. So with the grocery store example, for instance, say you just always forget to go to the grocery store. You can say the first item in your grocery store list can be remind me to go to the grocery store. And then you can add the address of your grocery store in the location field. And as long as you have location services on your devices, when you get near the grocery store, it will notify you, go to the grocery store. So that is really handy. And you can even, when you're working in the app, you see the radius that it's going to remind you inside. So it's 1,320 feet, I believe. You can take that and you can expand it. So that's really handy. Say if you need to go to the grocery store, you might probably want to expand it. So whenever you're driving close, you'll get the notification. But if it's something like remind me to turn on the oven when I get home, you might shrink it so that it's not telling you to preheat the oven 2 blocks away from home when you're walking from the bus stop. So it's really cool to be able to get a notification when you arrive or leave somewhere. That kind of takes it to the next level, I think, with what people have imagined they can do with their to-do list. And even if you have CarPlay, if you connect your phone via Bluetooth to your car, it can even give you a reminder when you get in your car. So that's kind of fun too, like buy gas, for instance.
Yeah, and it's relatively easy to set up. The biggest thing, I guess, is just remembering to put in that address of your grocery store or your home or your office or whatever, wherever it is that if you need to be reminded of the hardware store, well, you need to put the address of the hardware store in because it's not quite intelligent enough to know that yet. But if you designate that it's your hardware store,
right,
you got it.
If you have it in contacts, it will be able to know it. And that's kind of the thing with Siri too. If you include in contacts, for me, my grocery store is New Seasons. If I have it in contacts, it will be able to automatically use the location in the same way that it automatically knows where your home or your office is when you say it, as long as it's in your contact card. So that's another way it all kind of ties together. And we have information about that in the book too, about what do you need to make sure to do in contacts to be able to get the most out of that particular feature.
Yeah, because it's, what did you say, New Seasons?
Yeah.
You have to make sure it knows that is a grocery store, your grocery store.
If you're talking to it, if you're in your Mac, as you type in the location, like if I type New Seasons, if location services is on, a drop-down menu appears and you'll see, like, here are all the New Seasons in Portland, and I can pick it. But if you want to do it by voice, it needs to be in contacts, so it'll know.
Who uses the keyboard anymore? We have Siri. How about the Apple Watch aspect of the book? Obviously, Siri is a big part of that. But what did you find anything interesting with reminders or calendar on the watch itself?
Well, I would say the biggest connection with the Apple Watch is the Siri connection, and that it's one of the devices that you might have with you when you want to add something to calendar or you want to add something to reminders. Well, a couple of things. I do talk about how to check your calendar or check your reminders on your watch, and you can do that with Siri. But you can also set up like a complication on your watch. So that's on your watch face. There are little icons or little pieces of information, and you can set that up so that the watch face you're using uses a calendar complication and a reminders complication. And depending how big it is, if some of them are little tiny things and some of them are more like a line of text, if it's like a line of text, you'll see, if it's a reminders complication, your next one that's coming due. And it's the same thing with calendar. If it's a big line, you'll see your next event. Otherwise, you can just tap on that and it'll take you, it's a shortcut to reminders or to calendar. So that's a handy thing. But really, it's the Siri part, I think, which is the biggest deal. And I think one thing that people don't realize is exactly how complicated you can get. With both reminders and calendars, you can set up repeating events that are very specific. So, for instance, if your book club meets the third Wednesday of the month, you can set it up using a custom repeat to do that. But it is a lot of clicking in little boxes, and you got to click the T's for Tuesday and Thursday, or everything to set it up. A much quicker way to do it is actually just to use Siri, and you can say, Siri, what would you say? Siri, remind me to clean the cat box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8. And then it just happens. So it can be a real shortcut in that it will allow you to skip through all those pull-down menus and all the stuff that you'd have to do if you set it by hand. So it can be a time saver that way, which is handy.
I know a lot of us, and me included, have struggled with a comfort level. For some reason, talking to Siri on the Mac feels different than talking to it on your phone or your watch. But you're right. You can skip a lot of typing and a lot of clicking around if you use that. Now, I understand if you're in an office or in a public place, that may feel a little awkward. But at the same time, I think once you get used to it, it gets kind of addictive. And I have to admit, it's not uncommon. I've gotten some strange looks, yes, but if I'm in a public place, I will specifically raise my watch very close to my mouth and say, hey, do this, do that. And because it's in this kind of proximity, I don't have to say it very loud. She gets it right every time, and it's done.
Yeah, it's really handy. And it's easier to not get crazy mistakes when you're doing something pretty specific in reminders or calendar, as opposed to when you're doing a web search or something that's a lot more open-ended. Siri seems to be a lot more reliable, in my experience, when I'm doing things in these two apps.
Now, you said calendar is deceptively simple. I've been doing a series, an on and off series, talking to people about some of their productivity apps and asking them different questions. I've been quite shocked at the number of people who use calendar as their calendar. That they haven't opted. I said earlier I use BusyCal, but they haven't opted for BusyCal or Fantastical or any of the other calendar replacements. They just stay with calendar because it's powerful enough to do what they want, and of course it's built into the operating system. It's free, so it's got all these things going for it.
Yeah,
and it's good enough for even some people that I would have thought. Well, people that definitely qualify as power users. This works for them.
Yeah, well, I think one of the interesting things that I hadn't really thought about is that what calendar can do is often dependent on what your server setup is, like what calendar service you're using. That's definitely where my editor, Tanya, and I kind of went into uncharted territory, because there are a lot of really cool sharing and like inviting people to events features. And we realized that calendar is only one part of how that works, and how the server is set up is the other part. So calendar actually has some really cool features if you have the right setup. You can, for instance, check say you're in a work group, and your whole office is using calendar. You can look and check their schedule before you invite them to an event. And there's a special little panel where you can see their week's schedule and all the meetings they have. But that's not something that works with iCloud. That's something that works if you have your CalDAV server set up in a certain way, or actually Exchange servers can also do it. So that was part of the equation that is a little different from when you're using a lot of software, which is really pretty local to you, or at least it's a contained universe. In this case, there's some variability depending on what you're using. So iCloud, for instance, can't use the availability feature, but some of the other services can. So that was kind of interesting. But there are a lot of really cool sharing and sharing features. So you can invite people to events, and then there's just a whole set of symbols that tell you what's happening. So if the heartbreak that no one can come to your event happens, like there's a little special symbol for that. And so you can send an invitation to a group of people, and then you'll see as they reply if they can come or not. Sharing, I don't know, I'm sure you remember, Chuck, but it used to be really hard to share like a family calendar. It required a lot of hoops that you had to jump through. I can remember I actually did switch to BusyCal because BusyCal had some sharing features that we could use, or we ended up eventually using Google Calendar to make our family calendar. But now, if you use iCloud and you use family sharing, a family calendar is automatically created, and a family reminders list is automatically created for you. So it can completely eliminate the hassle of figuring out how to set that stuff up at all. And we do have a whole chapter about family sharing and how you can use its calendar and reminders features. And I think for a lot of people who maybe haven't really been paying attention to, what each version of the OS has added to calendar, or even if calendar and reminders are one or two things, that realizing that they can do what they can do with family sharing to simplify their home life is a pretty awesome thing. It's very simple to set up.
That's something I did not know had been added in. One thing about Apple, I do wish they do just a little better job of kind of notifying you or notifying all of us when they sneak these things in. I mean, and it's great that we have your book to solve that. I mean, I remember that was a big criticism for a long time, and I didn't know it was back in, or that it was in, period.
So got fixed. Yeah.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's just one part of family sharing. It also lets you share all your music and all your media and all your apps. So I think that's what people primarily think of it in terms of that. But the other thing it does is just automatically make these shared resources for you, which is really convenient.
I want to just step back to the CalDev discussion quickly, but because you do have instructions in the book on how to set up Calendar to work with the various CalDev options. Is that correct?
Well, we talk about some of the most common things. So we talk about iCloud because I think that's what a lot of people are using, and then actually just connecting another account to Calendar in a basic way is super easy. So we do talk about it. You just get stepped through it by the Calendar app itself. The sharing aspects, it's actually kind of different depending on what you're doing. So we talk about how to share a calendar. So if you want to have a calendar that everybody can add events to, that they can see events, and then they can set their own alerts for, so everybody knows what's happening. That's super easy when you're using iCloud. It requires a little bit different technique depending on what you're using other than that. So most just basic CalDev servers, it's similar to the iCloud setup. But if you're using Google Calendar or you're using Exchange, you can see calendars, add to them, all that sort of stuff through Calendar. But to create a shared one, you have to go online and use their web interface to do that. So, and we talk about that so people know what they have to do. We don't go through the whole, it just is endless, the number of ways things can be set up. So mostly we point people in the right direction once it goes off into Microsoft territory or deep into Google territory.
Right. It's funny. You would think you pop up Calendar, you start using it, you don't really think about all those services that are out there until you get just a little more sophisticated with your calendar, and then you realize sharing, collaboration, all those things. You can do some amazing things with some of this stuff, and with just Calendar. I mean, that came free on your Mac. So, if you want to step up to some of the power user features on some of the other stuff, great. But as I said earlier, there are a lot of people that find Calendar just fine.
Yeah. And Calendar does have some pretty powerful features. One of them being all the different custom alerts you can do. So your basic calendar alerts, just like your basic reminder alerts, depend on your notification settings. So we have a whole chapter about notifications so people can figure out what's going to be the most useful default settings for them on each of their devices. But you can change what you use at any time using a custom alert. And custom alerts can be, I think probably the thing most people don't know about is you can actually open a file with a custom alert. So that could be an automator workflow. That could be an audio file. It could be the database. So say you have to do your monthly accounting. Well, at the appointed time, your database opens and there it is, ready for you to set it up. What I did is I actually, just for the fun of it, if you're familiar with Rebecca Black and her famous song Friday, it's an internet meme. You can go check it out after this, Chuck. I have that so that it plays every morning, every Friday at 9 a.m. The sad thing is the day before this book came out, Apple shipped a new version of the OS. And in the new version of the OS, there is a bug, and that bug disables this feature. So you can actually set the open file custom reminder, and then it vanishes. So it's such a cool feature. You'll have to wait for the bug fix if you are on the most current OS. But hopefully they'll do that soon. We submitted our bug fixes. But that is a really powerful feature that you can do lots of cool stuff with, especially if you're someone who uses automator workflows. To be able to set them to go off at certain times can really simplify things for you in all different ways.
See, that's another one of those features. I knew it could do that. I'd totally forgotten about that. And now I'm sitting here thinking, I could do this, I could do this. And wow, you need to be reminded of the power of some of these programs. Mm-hmm. Shelley, I feel like so far we've kind of skipped over the iPhone version of calendars and reminders. Is anything there that is specific to that device that we've missed? I mean, we've talked about Siri, obviously, and the watch, but anything about iOS specific, or for that matter, the iPads?
Well, there's one feature that I found that I was not familiar with, which I thought was really fun. So I can tell you about that. Most of the stuff is very similar. There's cool things like if you want to see your calendar in week view, you rotate your phone to landscape view. Like that's something people might not realize. But one of the just kind of random things that I discovered when I was doing it was that you can not only create custom alerts, which can be handy, like if you want a certain sound at, 5-minute warning, and then a certain sound, which is it's now. With your iPhone, you can also set custom vibrations. So they have a bunch of different ones, and I had never seen these. So there's like an SOS Morse code. There's all these Morse code things. But you can actually take your phone and tap out your own custom alert. So I did shave in a haircut 2 bits, like whatever. It's really fun. I guess I'm sure people could find a useful way to use that, but it's also quite fun. Otherwise, most of the iPhone tips are basically about how you can find the features, because it's such a smaller, there's such a smaller footprint that a lot of things are hidden, and it's like how you rotate something, or all sorts of weird stuff like that. Like when you want to look at your reminders lists, they look like little, it's so easy to overlook. It's like there's little pieces, the top of little pieces of paper at the bottom of your screen, and you have to tap that for them to unfurl. So there's some things like that are so easy to overlook, and we include that, as you go through the book, the things that you might not notice or the things that might be helpful.
We've covered a lot of stuff here, Shelley. Is there anything else that we've missed in this new book that we should be aware of?
I think one thing that a lot of people will find useful is there is a big troubleshooting chapter at the end of the book, and that goes through all sorts of common problems people have with either of these programs and walks you through the solutions. Even things as new as calendar spam, which I don't know if you've encountered that. I luckily have not, but it's when you start getting notifications that are really spam, how to stop that. And 2 more common problems, like when changes on one device aren't showing up on another. So we go through all sorts of stuff that a lot of people often run into, and I'm sure will really appreciate being told how to get out of them.
Definitely, because we're talking about syncing information back and forth across all these devices. Yep. And I know Joe Kissel and I have had this discussion. I think I've had it with a number of people. Syncing is not easy. Syncing is hard to do it right and to do it like you would expect it would work. You think it should be easy, but it's not. So, yeah, that's unfortunately.
If it's done well, it looks easy, but when it starts breaking down, figuring it out sometimes is not easy.
Yeah, sort of like downhill skiing. Looks like there's nothing to it, but it can break your neck. I'm looking forward to being reminded of a lot of things. You've already reminded me of 2 here that I know I can take advantage of, and you forget it. You get used to using your calendar in one or 2 particular ways, and you fail to realize just all this stuff that is there. Apple does a really good job of making even their built-in programs pretty deep. They don't do a great job of documenting it, but they do a great job of producing a quality product. And that's why we need a Take Control book to help us take control of all this stuff.
To find all the little Easter eggs and all the little handy little things.
Exactly. Yeah. So how about the specifics on the book itself? It's obviously available at takecontrolbooks.com. What kind of pricing is there on this one?
It is $10.
Okay, so very, very, very affordable, and it's available now.
Right now, today was the day. It's there right now.
Good, great. Well, then that means today's the day it's out. Tomorrow we will publish this, I hope.
Yesterday was the day.
Yesterday? I don't think we're fooling anybody, shall we? Well, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing some of the tips and tricks and pointing us to some others. Again, I'm looking forward to it. What other projects do you have going, or is there anything you can talk about that you have going?
that was, this one only just finished. So I'm taking a few days off, and then we'll figure out what comes next.
All right. That's good. That's good. Well, it's always good to see you. Thanks for being here. And I got to get you back on the Mac Jury. I know our schedules are kind of tough to match up, but we'll make it happen.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. Yes, ma'am. We'll have you back again soon.
Sounds good.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. Please go check this out if you use calendar and reminders at all, and who doesn't. And if you aren't, then you should be. And if you are, you're going to get more out of them thanks to Scholle, because I know I am going to now as well. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.